Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start this presentation and discussion with a confession. Ever since I was a child, I've really only wanted one thing, and that's to be happy. I know, super profound, yeah, I get it. And yet still true, and true not just for me, true for virtually all of us. And like so many of us, I've pursued happiness, and I've done it in a fairly stereotypical fashion. I've worked hard, I've paid my dues, I've climbed the corporate ladder, and I've collected those things that we've all been led to believe are supposed to help us be happy. We know those things. It's the house, the car, the job, the title, the stature. Well, there's something happened in my life that really made me question all of it. You see, 12 years ago, I was an executive at a top-tier advertising firm when my little daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, came into the room, looked me straight in the face, and with a forlorn expression, she said, "Dad, I think I'm fat." Now, staring in the eyes of my little girl, my daughter, my little daughter, and I'm just shocked. I mean, where did this come from? Really, where did she pick up this label? Well, that shock, that gave way to anger, because I realized that she had seen something on TV, a commercial, that really, really impacted her. Well, that anger gave way to a deep, deep disappointment when I realized that commercial was one that was, of course, you can probably guess, right, created by my company. Somehow I had unintentionally become part of that chorus of voices that made my daughter, and undoubtedly many others, question herself and her value, and it broke my heart. My daughter was unhappy, and candidly, I was ashamed. So I quit. I quit that job. Now, having no job, I had some time on my hands. I had the opportunity to think, how had I gotten this thing so wrong? How had I gotten this pursuit of happiness so wrong? I started to look into my past, and I asked myself something really basic. I said, when was I the happiest? Well, the answer to that question, that was surprisingly easy to find. The happiest I'd ever been was when I served our nation as a United States Marine. Thank you. Now, the reason that was my happiest time, well, let me be clear, that was a bit of a mystery. I mean, was it the mental and physical stress that made me happy? Maybe it was the freedom, that freedom of earning little and owning next to nothing. No, I don't think it was those things, and I can tell you this, I promise you, it was not being, some joy associated with being dirty, tired, and hungry a lot of the time. No. Instead, I came to believe that what it was is that I was with a group of people that implicitly and explicitly trusted one another. Leave no man or woman behind wasn't a saying, it wasn't a motto to us, it was a truth. It was our truth, and it was a shared truth, and it was the embodiment of the level of trust that was expected and delivered every single day. And in my introspection and reflection, I came to realize that it was that level of trust that made those my happiest of days. And that sort of trust had been, shall we say, notably absent from my previous corporate career. Now, the fact that I spent a good chunk of my life in an environment of little to no trust, that should come as a surprise to approximately no one, right? I mean, after all, trust has been declining in America for generations. We simply do not trust each other anymore. And it's not just the big institutions we don't trust. It's not just the big brands, the government, and the media. No, we don't trust our fellow man, and we don't trust our fellow woman. Well, folks, this is all sorts of bad news. This is really bad news for all of us, because trust genuinely leads to all sorts of good things. Things and outcomes we want. Outcomes that we as individuals and society need. Trust promotes feelings of goodwill. It helps the economy. Trust is essential for a well-functioning democracy. It even helps keep war at bay. And trust, as research shows more and more, is an essential ingredient and contributing factor to our state and our level of happiness. I mean, think about it. On an individual basis, trust is what allows us to live our lives and to pursue our dreams. It allows for a division of labor. If I trust you to do your part, for you to fill your role and you to play your position well, then I'm free to focus on other things. Things that make me productive. Things that make me happy. If trust has all these benefits and is such an essential ingredient to happiness, then how do we build more of it into our lives? And how do we do it when day after day, headline after headline tells us not to trust one another? Where the smart bet says, first give me a reason to trust you, and then maybe, just maybe I'll trust you. Well, maybe that is the right perspective. Perhaps that is the smart bet. And it's a safe bet, right? I mean, who here would trust blindly? I mean, seriously, who here would trust blindly and do something crazy like get in the back seat of a car with a total stranger? Yeah, okay, and who here would recommend to anybody that you let someone you don't know stay in your house, especially when you're not there? And who here, seriously, thinks it's a good idea for us to tell our private, most intimate secrets in a public forum? Yeah, and let's not even get into those dating apps, okay? No, the reality is we actually do trust a lot today, yet we tend to do it as a reflex, unconsciously extending trust as a result to certain stimuli. But what if us here right now were to think about trust a little bit different, something that we could build and strengthen in ourselves and in those around us? I say that, and I ask the question, because when I was in the Marine Corps, I didn't just use my physical and mental muscles. I used trust as a muscle, and I did it all the time. The daily exercise of trust was habit forming. It was powerful. It was addicting. I was in a near constant state of active trust, and I'm telling you folks, it felt really, really good. And so, let's do something here. Let's imagine together that trust is to happiness what a muscle is to health. What can we do together to strengthen and build that trust muscle in all of us? Now, you've likely heard of trust falls, where you fall into the arms of friends and colleagues, right? I'm going to suggest we do something different, something that we can do all the time and to much greater effect. I'm suggesting we do trust lifts, something I've put to good use in the last decade or so. So what am I talking about? First, we need to lean on one another more. We need to work together and work on those situations where we can only be successful when we're successful together. And the good news is, life gives us these environments all the time. Teachers, well, you create those environments when you hand out tough team assignments. And another example, startups. They live in these environments as they try to create businesses on shoestring budgets out of somebody's garage or basement. Overcoming difficult circumstances and tough challenges and doing that with others builds environments ripe for creating trust between individuals and across teams, especially when paired with intent. We need to establish the concept of intent with the teams that we lead and that we're a part of. Sports teams, work teams, study groups. We need to trust that the people on our team are operating with good intentions and enable them to find new, even beautiful ways of accomplishing goals and reaching outcomes by ways and by means we would never have maybe thought about ourselves. Leading with intent and trusting intention, it removes fear, it builds confidence, and it results in trust. There's a saying that goes, we tend to judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. And I would submit here right now to you that we would be a lot happier if we strove to view our counterparts through the same lens of intention that we grace ourselves with. You need to follow your gut. The first step in building that trust muscle, you got to trust yourself. Like the airlines like to say, you better put on that oxygen mask before helping others, okay? For me, that means I set a standard, I believe a high standard of how I wish to live and behave, and I attempt to live to that standard every single day. It also means that I accept and I admit failure. And I do so as an opportunity to learn and better myself, and yet to do so without judgment. In a very practical sense, trusting my gut meant quitting a job, a very, very good job, simply because it was incongruent with my sense of self. And this last point is really important, because if something doesn't feel right to you, then trusting your gut, it becomes twice as important. Let's commit to radical levels of transparency. I'm not talking about some open door policy or thing of that nature. I'm talking about giving the people we live and work with an open invitation to constructively challenge any assumption. Accept and admit success and failure. Receive feedback, especially difficult feedback. Receive that as a gift. And my team's and sometimes my family's favorite pastime, allow them to prove you wrong. Now, I've learned that last one, it's simple but difficult, but it's worth the injury sometimes incurred by my ego, because it makes it really, really clear that we can value one another's perspectives and we can voice well-intentioned thoughts and opinions without fear of judgment. And folks, that simply creates better outcomes, and it builds trust. And finally, let's start saying it. Let's say it. Let's use the word trust. Tell the people you're closest with. Tell them with sincerity. Tell them that you trust them, and see how your expression of that sentiment, see how it makes them feel. Seriously, tell someone you trust them and ask them how that makes them feel. Tell someone else you trust them and then ask yourself how it makes you feel. You might be surprised by the power of these words, especially as you begin extending trust into broader circles, into the people that you interact with every single day. And then again, you may already know the impact of these words. For how often do you already say or hear, "Trust me"? What I'm asking you to do, though, is something different. I'm asking you to flip that familiar script, and I'm asking you to, instead of just say, "Trust me," start saying, "I trust you." Now, I've seen these principles, all aspects of these principles, work in all aspects of my life, day in and day out. Work, home, friends, and family. And I can tell you this, if you make extending trust part of your life, not only will it uplift you, it will lift up those around you. And I promise you this, it will make you incrementally happier. And I sincerely believe, if just those of us in this room made a concerted effort to make this extra effort part of your daily routine, the world would be just a little bit more trustworthy and a lot happier. Thank you.